Welcome everyone to tonight's District 5 United meeting. On tonight's agenda, we have Deputy County Executive David Campos with Santa Clara County, who will provide a Reid-Hillview Airport update and then take some questions.
Thank you very much, Juan, and good evening, everyone. This is David Campos. I'm here from 70 West Heading, which is the county main office. I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. With that said, I just wanted to give you a very brief update on where things are with Reid-Hillview Airport, and specifically on the issue of the Eastridge Little League. And I'll just make a very brief presentation, and we'll be happy to take your questions. Before I do that, I want to note that a couple of weeks ago, we had received from Juan Estrada a number of questions that the Cassell Neighborhood Association and other members of the coalition had for the County of Santa Clara. And I wanted to let you know that I just emailed a document to Juan that has the county's responses to all of those questions. The main thing here is that we want to be as responsive and as transparent as we can be. And if there are any additional follow-up questions to those specific questions, please let me know. With that said, as you know, a lot has been said, a lot has been written about the Reid-Hillview Airport. And as I've noted to a number of people that I have spoken to, I cannot change what happened or hasn't happened in the past. My role right now as a deputy county executive is to bring us forward, and specifically move us forward around the issue of the Eastridge Little League. There may be other issues related to the airport that I'm involved in, but the focus for me has been the Eastridge Little League. And as you know, in August of last year, the County of Santa Clara released a study that was conducted by a couple of national experts, Dr. Sammy Zeron, as well as Dr. Bruce Lamphere. And they made a presentation about their study and the results of that study. Most recently, actually, Dr. Lamphere had a presentation that he provided in the community. We actually flew him out from British Columbia so that he could present the results of the study. But the study essentially showed, as has been reported, that there is a level of lead in the air that is dangerous. Specifically, this study analyzed 17,000 blood samples that were collected from the years 2011 to 2020 from children in the neighborhood who are within 1.5 miles of the airport. And the study found that those who live within 0.5 mile of Reid-Hillview Airport had significantly higher levels of lead in their blood than those who lived farther away. A difference of about 0.40 micrograms per deciliter, or 1/10 of a liter. And from the perspective of the experts, that is dangerous. And because of that finding that focused on the presence of lead in the air, the Board of Supervisors took a number of actions, but two main actions. One, it took the action of directing staff to no longer sell leaded fuel on Reid-Hillview Airport and San Martin Airport facilities owned by the county. And so that was a very significant step. And in so doing, the County of Santa Clara became the first jurisdiction anywhere in the country that essentially prohibits the sale of leaded fuel at an airport. That was the first thing that was done. The second thing is that the Board of Supervisors directed the staff to pursue options to address issues of lead contamination, including the possibility of early closure of the airport. As those of you who have followed the issue know, even though this airport is owned by the county, the decision of whether to close the airport is not one that ultimately rests with the county, but actually rests with the federal government, the Federal Aviation Agency. So that is what the Board of Supervisors has done. Because of those actions by the Board of Supervisors, the county essentially notified the Eastridge Little League that they could no longer engage in any recreational activity on the 3 fields that are owned by the county. And quite frankly, that was not a decision that was only specific to the Eastridge Little League. It was a decision that applies to any recreational activity. Because of the presence of lead in the air, the county cannot allow anyone to engage in recreational activity on the 3 fields that are currently at the airport. Let me address a second issue that has come up, and I know that there has been some confusion around that issue, is that earlier there was a study that was commissioned that actually focused on the presence of lead in the soil at the airport. And as has been reported, the County of Santa Clara commissioned a study and released it earlier this year that found that soil samples taken at Reid-Hillview Airport did not contain lead levels that exceeded local, state, or federal standards. Again, the focus of that particular study was lead in the soil. And I just want to note that the 2 studies, one that found dangerous level of lead in the air, and the second study that focused on lead in the soil, they're not mutually exclusive. The fact that the soil study found that the levels did not exceed local, state, or federal standards does not mean that it is safe for children or anyone for that matter to engage in recreational activity on those 3 fields. In fact, the 2 studies are consistent with one another. And the fact remains that even though the levels of lead in the soil do not exceed local, state, or federal standards, there's still a danger because of the presence of lead in the air. So I just want to make that point clear. In terms of where we are right now, just so you know, we are in the process of negotiating with the Eastridge Little League. The board has made it clear that the county is committed to helping the Eastridge Little League continue to play and continue its activities. And in fact, the Board of Supervisors has taken the step of approving money to help them short-term find fields where they can play. In fact, the Board of Supervisors has approved $225,000 to that effect. And we are in the process of negotiating a way of allowing them to benefit from that allocation. The Board of Supervisors has made it clear that not only are we committed to helping them short-term, but we're also committed to working with them to find a long-term solution. So once we have processed the issue of allowing them to benefit from the allocation short-term, we are committed to working with them to find a long-term solution, a long-term place where they can play, with the understanding that if at some point, as we hope, based on what the board has decided, there is a closure of the airport, we envision that there will be a community process at that point that will focus on what you as a community want to see at that site. And of course, when that happens, when that process begins, the Eastridge Little League will have a seat at the table with the idea that coming back to that site could be a possibility for them. So that's where things are. And in the meantime, as we continue negotiating with them, we want the community to know that the county is committed to being transparent, to being open, and on the issue of lead, that it's doing everything possible to address the issue of lead contamination. Besides the 2 actions that we have taken, we have also allocated funds to educate the public about the issue of lead. And as many of you know, the county has awarded a contract to the Luna organization to educate the community. We want to make sure that whatever we do, that we provide people with as much information as possible. From the perspective of the Board of Supervisors and the county administration, this is clearly a public health issue. It's an environmental justice issue, and we take it very seriously because of that. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Juan, and happy to take any questions that people may have.
All right, thank you, David, for providing information. And the first question, since it says anonymous attendee, I won't ask you to share your audio and video. And the question is, how is the lead level in the air going to change? Isn't it just being moved to another location? For example, Maneta Airport.
I don't understand the question. I guess what happens if I assume that it assumes that there's a closure of Reid-Hillview, and if those facilities or those functions are transferred to another airport, that could impact that airport. So that's a possibility. I apologize that I don't fully understand the question, but our intent and our hope is that whatever happens, that there is a very clear analysis of any action that's taken, so that we not only assess the impact within the Reid-Hillview geographic area, but also if there is a movement of any functions to another location, that we fully analyze the impact on that new geographic area.
All right, and so the next question is George.
Sure. It's actually a 3-point question. I can get back to. I don't know. I don't want to take too much time, but I was wondering first, is the county going to repeat this study now that leaded fuel is not on sale at Reid-Hillview?
There is an intention to analyze the level of lead in the air after the action of not selling leaded fuel. We want to know what the level of lead in the air is in light of that action. The one thing that we will note is that the fact that we're not selling leaded fuel on site does not mean that all of the planes that are flying in and out of the airport are using unleaded fuel, because what ends up happening is that a number of those airplanes fuel outside of the facility, and many of them use leaded fuel. But that analysis will be done.
Okay, thank you. Now this one, I don't know if you can. I apologize if this is out of your area, but I just haven't found an answer on this. So in 2008, the county's legal team wrote a memo saying that the airport is obligated in perpetuity, not just 2031.
Mm-hmm.
And this has not been mentioned since by the current board in any of their plans. Instead, that there have been even more grants by the FAA. So what has changed about this?
I don't know. I want to be accurate in my response. I don't know what specific memorandum you're pointing to that's dated 2008. What I can tell you is, in terms of the applicable dates of when the airport could be closed by the federal government, what our legal counsel has advised us is that based on existing regulations, existing law, the earliest that the federal government could close this airport, if it decides to do that, is 2031, because in 2011, the County Board of Supervisors accepted federal grants that required, upon acceptance of those grants, that you operate the airport for 20 years. So that's what we have been advised, and we have not been advised that there is a requirement that the airport operate in perpetuity. That is not our understanding, and if there is something that says differently that you can point to, I'm happy to look into that issue, and if there's a specific date of that memo, happy to look further into it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll put it in the chat in a few
Okay.
minutes.
Thank you.
Sorry, last question. So I was wondering, because you mentioned, if you can elaborate, how the two studies consistent. So if lead is in the air but not in the soil, where is it going?
Well, I think the way, and I'm not a lead expert. This is something that we have posed to the experts that we have retained for that purpose, and what they indicate is that the fact that lead is present in the air does not mean that it would be in the soil at a level that is high. That's the nature of lead from their perspective, and that what it means is that if we get to a point where there is no longer lead in the air, that what the soil study shows is that if that presence of lead in the air is no longer there, that you could actually utilize this land for different purposes, and that there wouldn't be a health risk at that point, as far as we know, based on what we know today. But again, that the fact that there isn't lead in the soil at a level that's high doesn't address the issue that there's still lead in the air.
All right, David, and before we move on to the next question, if participants, attendees have information to share, if they have additional questions, did you want to share your email address with them, if so I can provide it to all of the attendees, or how did you want to handle that?
I can provide my email, so I can put it in the chat. Is that the best way to do it?
Sure, I can also email it to all the attendees.
Okay, okay, why don't you do that?
Okay.
Happy to. And like I said, we just provided several pages of responses to many questions that were presented to us, and we want to continue to be transparent and responsive.
All right, so next is Stephen McHenry.
Yeah, so 80% of the flights at Reid-Hillview study in July of last year showed that 80% of the flights can use unleaded fuel. And now that only unleaded fuel can be sold there, according to the county's own study conducted by Dr. Zaran, with 80% of the lead removed, there's no difference between living within a half a mile of the airport than farther away. But this is never mentioned in the updates we get, only how bad the lead situation was, not the current lead situation. Why is that never being mentioned?
Well, I don't think that the county has analyzed where the issue of the presence of lead is since we stopped selling unleaded fuel at our facility. That analysis has not been done yet. And so what we have reported is what's in the report, and the fact that you read it to mean, what you just said, that's your opinion, but it's not what our experts have addressed specifically.
And I have one more question. So for over 4 years, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District monitored the air at the airport, and over the last 2 years never found any levels that exceeded EPA standards. In fact, they were about 1/3 of the EPA standards. Monitoring stopped when there was an electrical problem, but this has now been fixed. Are the results of that current monitoring going to be made public?
Well, I think that's if you want the air district to provide that information, I would encourage you to reach out to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is Kashi. And Kashi, give me a second. Apologies, I wasn't ready to unmute you. There you are, Kashi.
Yep, my question is, so you have said, given the study saying there's air in, so there is lead in the air, there are chances, there are provisions for to close the airport sooner than 2031. So what, like, let's that if we take that scenario in account, what is the earliest do when county can make take actions to close the airport?
And I apologize the frustrating nature of the situation that no one can really give you an exact date legally unless something changes in the existing law and regulations. The earliest that an action could be taken is 2031. And in terms of what an earlier possible date, it really depends on what happens specifically in Washington, D.C. What I can tell you is that the congressional delegation that represents San Jose, Zoe Lofgren, Ro Khanna, they are doing everything they can in Washington, D.C. To see if the law can change or regulations can change to allow an earlier closure. But I cannot give you a specific date. And like I said, ultimately, it's something that is decided by the federal government, and the county is doing everything it can, but it is not our decision.
And another quick question. Am I allowed to ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Uh, so the study was done only around 1.5 miles radius of the airport.
Mhm.
And that too for the children's. Is there a study which will be coming up, what, for adults and especially old age?
There is no focus on adults at this particular point. I think that there are issues that can be raised in terms of the safety for adults. I think that the priority here was children, just because of the vulnerability of a child's developing brain. I think that what you see from the Board of Supervisors is, a recognition that lead is an issue that affects everyone, not just children, but adults as well, which is why the county took the step that it took around not allowing the sale of leaded fuel, so that it could minimize the exposure of lead, not only to children, but to all residents of the county, including adults.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we have an anonymous attendee, and the comment is, since there is no lead sold at the airport, the airborne lead is no longer a concern.
Well, as I noted, the fact that the county is not selling leaded fuel doesn't mean that leaded fuel is not being used. In fact, there are a number, there's I don't know what the exact percentage would be, but there are a number of airplanes that fuel that buy fuel outside the airport, and that fuel is still leaded. So while we have reduced the use of leaded fuel significantly, there are still a number of planes that use leaded fuel. Ultimately, I don't really want to speculate one way or the other. Ultimately, that is an issue that will be studied by the county. I think someone asked that question earlier, and the county intends to have our experts look at the level of lead in the air now that the county is no longer selling leaded fuel on its premises.
Next comment is, since the airplanes no longer use leaded gas, shouldn't a new study be done to see if the amount of lead in the air has improved? I think you just answered that.
Yes.
Okay, next one is, if you stop the Little League playing on Reid-Hillview Airport because of the lead, are you also stopping the Little League that will play at the new fields behind Eastridge and closing the water park activities across from Reid-Hillview Airport?
We are working with the Little League to find, alternatives where they can play. And as we find specific fields or areas where they can play, we are looking at the analysis of what is safe based on the study that was conducted by the county. In terms of the surrounding neighborhood and other uses and other locations, we have made our study available to the various government agencies that own property around the area, so that they can engage in their own analysis of what is safe and what isn't. So we have a number of facilities that are owned by the city, by school districts, and it is, our hope that and our expectation that they will engage in their own analysis of what is safe, based on what the study shows. The county can only control county property. We cannot dictate what happens with property that is owned by another government agency.
Next comment is, when will the new study on the level of lead in the air be done?
I don't have an answer for you, but as soon as we have that answer, I will be happy to provide that information.
All right, and next question is, anything going to change as far as airplanes flying at all hours?
The answer is no. And, the way that, I am a lawyer as well. And one of the challenging things that I can tell you about this situation is that even though the county owns the airport, federal law is very clear that the county cannot micromanage the operations of the airport, and that in fact it can play no role in the operations of the airport. And the way that the law that governs airports throughout the country works is that airports are treated like highways, meaning that anyone can use them, anyone can access them. And in fact, federal law prohibits the county from having any kind of regulation of that use. We, for instance, cannot have a curfew, we cannot have hours, or nor can we limit which type of plane can use it. The only limitation is, what is actually practical given the size of the airport. I know that some noted that in the last couple of days, some jets have flown into the airport, and that is allowed so long as the facilities provide for it, or it's feasible. But we cannot have any limitations.
All right, it looks like we've got the final question, and the question is, and all of these that I've read are anonymous attendees, and so that's why I'm reading them. What action has the county taken with the money they received from the paint lawsuit?
Yes, and this, just so that people understand the question, not too long ago, Santa Clara County was one of 10 jurisdictions that sued the lead paint industry over the presence of lead in paint in homes throughout the county. And these 10 jurisdictions put in money to sue this industry. And out of that lawsuit, which was successful, an agreement was reached between the lead paint industry and these 10 jurisdictions, giving these jurisdictions about $300 million for them to allocate among their residents. The way that the $305 million was allocated was based on the number of households within each jurisdiction, and based on Santa Clara County's size and the amount of money that was provided, the County of Santa Clara gets about $16 million that it will then be able to allocate to its residents. The county is in the process of figuring out how that money will be allocated. So it's in the developing stage. There is a website that I'm happy to send to you, Juan, that has more information about this.
Sure.
But this program is in the developing stage. But as you can imagine, even though $300 million sounds like a lot of money, and $16 million is a lot of money for what is needed in the county, that obviously will not be enough. So at some point, whatever the criteria whatever the criteria that the county develops, there won't be enough money to address every need, and so it probably will be provided on a first come first served basis in some way. But more detail to come, and I will share that link so that people can learn more about that.
And apologies, someone had emailed me a question because they're out of the country, and the question is, when will the taxiway sign replacement and ramp area repavement take place?
I think that's in the works, and I think that the airport staff will be presenting something in the near future, and whatever that is when that's presented, it will be a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, which will have the final say. And so you as members of the public will have an opportunity to provide input.
All right, David, thank you again for providing information and answering questions. And thank you again, and good night.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate your time, and have a wonderful evening.